Is your Claude AI bill too high? Here's probably why. A lot of people use Claude and think the cost is only based on the message they type, but that's not really how it works. Claude and any other AI tool like Claude, like ChatGPT, is priced by tokens. And tokens are not just prompt. Tokens include what you send to Claude, what Claude sends back to you, the context you include, the files and documents you upload, the conversation history, the tool calls, the agent steps, the retries, and sometimes even repeated instructions behind the scenes. So if you're using Claude casually, you may not notice this much. But if you're using Claude inside a business workflow, an automation, or an AI agent, token usage can grow very fast. And this is where people get surprised. They look at the invoice at the end of the month and they say, wait, how did we spend this much? Or when you look at the architecture, the answer usually becomes obvious. The system is sending too much context to Claude. It's using a powerful model for simple tasks, or it's generating long answers unnecessarily, or it's retrying too much, or it's running agents without enough caps, without enough limits, or it's sending the same information over and over again. So let's break this down in a simple way. When you use Claude, there are two basic types of tokens you need to understand: input tokens and output tokens. Input tokens are everything you send to the model, everything you send to Claude. When you type something, you upload a document, you send to Claude, that's input tokens. Then you have output tokens, which is what Claude generates back. So if you send Claude a long prompt, that's input. If Claude gives you a long answer, this is output. And output tokens are usually more expensive than input tokens. And it's important that we understand that, because some people only think about what they send to the model, but the answer coming back also costs money. So if you ask Claude for a detailed 10-page report every time, that output is part of your bill. So input token cost plus output token cost equals total usage cost. That's the basic math. But in real business systems, the math gets even more interesting, because it's not just one prompt, it's one prompt times hundreds of thousands of requests. And if you are using AI agents, it may be one user request that turns into 5, 10, or 20 model calls in the background. So one visible task may create many invisible AI calls. That's where costs can surprise people. Let's use a simple example. Let's say one of your workflows sends 100,000 input tokens to Claude and receives 10,000 output tokens from Claude. That sounds like a lot, but it can happen easily if you are sending long documents, chat history, instructions, or tool results. Now let's look at what that could cost using different Claude models. If you are using Fable 5 or Mythos 5, based on their current pricing, that would be 100,000 tokens would be about $1 for the input and about 50 cents for the output. And you can always verify that the pricing by going to Claude website, but also drop a link in the description to make it easier for you. So about $1.50 total usage cost for this one run. And you can look at that and you say, okay, that's not crazy. But now multiply that by 1,000 runs, for example. That's 1,500. Now multiply that by every day for a month. Now you're looking at around 45,000 in a single month, which for some business might be okay, but many small businesses don't even make that amount in a month. And that's just one workflow pattern. Now let's look at Opus 4.8. Using the same example of 100,000 input tokens and 10,000 output tokens. Again, not crazy for one run, but at 1,000 runs per day, that's about $750 per day. Over 30 days is about $22,500 in token usage in a single month. Now let's look at Sonnet 5, which is the cheaper one from between Fable 5 and Opus 4.8 and Sonnet 5. Sonnet's the cheaper one. At the current introductory pricing, the same example would be about 30 cents per run, which is much cheaper compared to Fable 5 and Opus 4.8. But if you run that workflow 100 times per day, that's still about $300 per day. And over 30 days, this is about $9,000. And this is why I say that model choice matters, because the same workflow can cost very different amounts depending on which model you use. And if you use the strongest model for everything, you may be overpaying. Not because Claude is doing anything wrong, but because the architecture is wrong. The model is doing exactly what you ask it to do. The question is whether you should have asked that model to do that task in the first place. This is where people misunderstand Claude usage. They think usually I'm just asking a question, but in the background, the system may be sending a large context window. It may be sending previous conversation history. It may be sending a long system prompt. It may be sending tool outputs. It may be reading a document. It may be calling another tool. It may be retrying after an error. And if you are using an agent, and it may be planning, searching, checking, validating, and then writing the final answer. And every single step can add tokens. So if your cloud bill is too high, the first thing I would ask is not, is cloud expensive? The first thing I would ask is, what are we sending to cloud in the first place? Because that's usually where the problem starts. Are we sending the entire document when we only need one section? Are we sending the entire conversation history when a short summary would work? Are we asking for long outputs when a short answer would be enough? Are we using Opus or Fable for simple classification tasks? Are we letting an agent run too many steps? Are we tracking usage by workflow? Are we logging which tasks are costing the most? If you do not know those answers, the answer to those questions, you do not really have cost control. You just have a bill at the end of the month. And this is where the AI architecture lesson starts. A good AI system should not treat Claude like a magic box where everything goes in and everything comes out. A good system should decide what needs Claude, what does not need Claude, and which Claude model should handle which type of tasks. For simple tasks, you may not need the strongest model. If you are classifying an email as a sales, support, or billing email, use a cheaper model or even simple rules if the data is structured. If you are creating a CRM record from a form, you may not need AI at all. You may just need automation. If you are summarizing a short message, you may not need the most powerful cloud model, but if you're analyzing a complex contract, reviewing a large technical document, reasoning through a massive business problem, or running a high-value agentic workflow, then a stronger model may make sense here. And that's a difference. Use the intelligence where intelligence is actually needed. Do not use it everywhere just because it's available. Now let's talk about ways to control cloud costs, a couple of techniques you can use to control your costs. The first technique is model routing. Model routing simply means different tasks go to different models. Simple tasks, you send to cheaper model. The normal daily business workflow, probably you can use a balanced model, the middle model. Complex reasoning, you can probably use a strong model. High risk decisions in your workflow, you can probably put that for human review, bring human in the loop. That alone can reduce costs dramatically, just this one technique. Now, the second technique is context control, meaning you should not send everything to Claude every time. If the model only needs one section of a document, send that section. Don't send the whole document. If the conversation is long, summarize the earlier part instead of resending everything. If the same instructions are repeated over and over, look at caching techniques or a better system design. The third technique is output control. With output control, you can tell Claude how long the answer should be. For example, if you only need 5 bullet points, do not ask for a full report. If you need a short classification, ask for a short classification. If you need JSON, ask for JSON. Do not let every answer become like a long essay. The fourth technique is prompt caching, and this applies if you're using Claude API. So if your workflow uses the same long context repeatedly, caching can reduce the cost of repeated input. And in case you are not familiar with prompt caching, it works like a short-term memory for AI. The first time you upload a massive document, for example, Claude reads it completely and saves a copy. in its memory. For every follow-up question, Claude pulls from this memory instead of rereading the whole document from scratch. And because this saves computing power, you get probably around 90% discount on those repeated words, which is very useful for agents, knowledge base, long instruction, and repeated workflow. If you uploaded a long document already, so why paying for tokens for the agent to read that massive document? Again, just cache it within the memory so the cloud can access it whenever it needs without charging you the whole context again. The fifth technique is batching, also applies to Cloud API, and you can use any other ChatGPT, OpenAI API, etc. Batch processing lets you save probably around 50% on costs by letting the AI handle non-urgent tasks on its own schedule instead of answering right away. The way it works, you bundle a large number of documents, for example, custom tickets or summaries together and submit them all at once. And what happens is that the cloud will process that whole thing in the background when traffic's low, which makes it perfect budget-friendly choice for heavy workloads where you do not require an immediate response. There's a situation where you need Claude to reply right away. There's a situation where you can just let it run for hours or until next day. So in that case, you can just use batch processing, send everything at once, and then you're going to save about at least 50%, I think. The sixth technique is observability. Very important. You need to track token usage, not just total spend. You need to know usage by model, by workflow, by employee, by customer, by agent, and by task type. That would be the ideal scenario if you have visibility, observability on all how exactly the tokens are being spent, right? Because if the bill is high, you need to know where the money is going. Is it one workflow that caused this high bill? Was it one user? Was it one of our agents that went in the lose and spent all those tokens? Was it one specific model? Was it an error? Things like that. Because without that visibility, observability, you are guessing, and guessing with AI can really get expensive. The seventh technique is usage limits. It's very important that you set daily limits, set monthly limits, set per user limits, set per agent limits, set alerts when usage hits, for example, 50%, 75%, and 90%. You should be receiving alerts like, hey, you just hit X% of your AI budget. And if something suddenly spikes, someone should know before the bill becomes a problem, right? The eighth technique is agent controls. Agents can be powerful, but they can also spend tokens very quickly. So you need limits. You need to set maximum steps, maximum retries, maximum tool calls, maximum output length, fallback rules, escalation rules, and human review when needed. Because an agent that gets stuck in a loop can become very expensive very fast. So if your cloud bill is too high, the answer is not necessarily stop using Claude. Claude can be extremely valuable. I love Claude. I use Claude. So the better answer is use it with better architecture. Use the right model, send the right context, control the output, monitor usage, set limits, cache repeated context, batch non-urgent work, and design the workflow before you scale it. Because the goal is not to use Claude more. The goal is to create more business value with less waste. That's the difference. And this is where businesses need to be careful, because a high cloud bill does not always mean the model is too expensive. Sometimes it means the system is poorly designed. Sometimes it means the wrong model is being used. Sometimes it means too much context is being sent. Sometimes it means the output is too long. And sometimes it means nobody is watching the usage. And sometimes it just means AI was used where automation would have been enough. And that's why architecture matters. A good AI system should be smart, but it should also be cost aware. You should know when to use Claude, when not to use Claude, which Claude model to use, how much context to send, etc., etc. And this is how you avoid surprises. So if your Claude bill is too high, don't blame Claude. Look at your workflow, look at your prompts, look at your model choices, look at your context, look at your agent loops, and look at your architecture. Because the build is usually a symptom. The architecture is usually the cause. And that's that. That's a wrap for today, guys. And I hope you did enjoy this video and you were able to extract some insights, some valuable insights. That's what we're doing here. We talk about AI operations in our channel, about AI operation architecture in real business implementation. No hype, just practical conversation about how AI actually fits in real business. And again, if this was helpful, make sure you like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.